The Billionaire's airport shock. A ghost from the past reappears, child in tow. Hook. No way. Daniel Brooks froze. Just a few feet away in the bustling airport terminal stood Amelia Green, his ex, the woman who had vanished from his life without a word 3 years prior. But she wasn't alone. In her arms, she held a small child bundled up in a blue peacoat. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Couldn't be. He'd recognize her anywhere, even with slightly longer hair and a sharper jawline. Her expression was tense, like she was on high alert, trying to go unnoticed. He took a step toward her. Amelia looked up, and their eyes met. For an instant, everything seemed to stop. Daniel saw fear in her face, but before he could react, she averted her gaze and quickened her pace. Amelia! He tried to call out, but the airport noise drowned out his voice. He pushed forward, dodging passengers with luggage, ignoring the blare of boarding announcements. He couldn't lose her again. When he reached the spot where he had last seen her, she was gone. A knot formed in his throat. Couldn't be just a coincidence. The child. There was something unsettling about that child. Daniel stood still, trying to calm his racing pulse. His eyes hadn't deceived him. The boy had his eyes. What would you do if you saw your ex-partner with a child who looked exactly like you? Tell us your first reaction in the comments below. The haunting eyes and a relentless search. Another one, Mark Thompson, his partner and best friend, asked, tilting his head. Daniel took a gulp of his whiskey and nodded. They were in his penthouse in Manhattan, the city lights glittering beyond the windows. I saw her, Mark, there at the airport. Mark put his glass down. Are you sure? Do you think I wouldn't recognize her? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. It was her, and she was carrying a child. A child? Daniel closed his eyes. He had my eyes, Mark. Silence hung heavy. Are you saying that? I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper, but I can't get it out of my head. Did you try to talk to her? I tried. She disappeared as always. Mark sighed and rubbed his chin. Look, buddy. If you think that child could be yours, you have to find out. You can't just sit around waiting for destiny to send you the answer. Daniel clenched his jaw. I don't know where to find her. Mark watched him for a moment and then smiled wryly. Don't mess with me. You're Daniel Brooks. If anyone can find a person, it's you. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, staring at his laptop screen, but not reading the pending emails. Amelia. He hadn't seen her in 3 years. 3 years without a single damn explanation. He remembered the day she disappeared. There were no prior arguments, no signs that anything was wrong. Just a terse text message. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. He had tried to find her at first, but there was no trace, as if she had been swallowed up by the earth. Now, out of nowhere, she reappeared with a child who had his very own eyes. He lit a cigarette, something he only did when his mind was on the verge of collapse. He couldn't leave this unresolved. He was going to find her. And this time, he wouldn't let her escape without answers. A familiar face in a small town. You don't look good, Daniel. Mark crossed his arms as he watched him. They were in the offices of Brooks Capital, the investment fund they had built together over the last decade. Daniel had been looking lost and frowning for days, which, for anyone who knew him, meant he was on the verge of exploding. I haven't slept well. Tell me about it, Mark smirked. Have you found anything? Daniel took out his cell phone and impatiently swiped the screen. I called some contacts, but I don't have anything yet. No one knows anything about her. Why don't you try looking for her yourself? Because I don't know where to start. Mark scoffed. Brother, stop messing with your head and do what you would do with any other investment. Look for information. Didn't you have contacts in a smaller town upstate New York? You said she was from there, right? Daniel fell silent. Maybe someone has seen her. A friend, an old contact. What do you have to lose by trying? Daniel sighed. Nothing. Exactly. So get your butt in gear and start looking. That afternoon, Daniel drove to a small town upstate. As he drove, his mind spun out of control. The child. Ever since he'd seen him, the image had stuck with him like a splinter. He couldn't stop thinking about his eyes. His mother always said the Brooks family had an unmistakable gaze, that intense blue rarely seen. If Amelia had had a child, why had she never told him? If he was his, why would she hide something like that from him? He gripped the steering wheel tightly. The idea that she could have hidden something so important from him filled him with rage. But there was also fear. Fear of discovering that he had lost 3 years of his son's life. The search in the town was harder than he imagined. He asked in cafes, bookstores, and even at the university. But no one seemed to know her, until he reached a small restaurant near the town square. Amelia Green, he asked the waitress, showing her an old photo on his cell phone. The woman frowned, as if trying to remember. I think I've seen her. She comes in sometimes with her boy. Daniel's heart raced. Do you know where she lives? No, but she usually comes in the afternoons. Daniel ordered a coffee and waited. The clock read 6 p.m. when Amelia entered the restaurant. Daniel saw her before she noticed him. She was wearing a gray coat, the same one she had at the airport. She walked quickly, as if she was used to surveying her surroundings. And there he was, the child Leo. She held his hand, and Daniel's blood froze. The resemblance was impossible to ignore. He stood up just as Amelia looked up and saw him. Her eyes widened in shock. What are you doing here? She whispered. I could ask you the same thing. The tension was unbearable. Amelia straightened up as if she wanted to block his reaction. It's not the time. You've been hiding from me for 3 years. I think any time is a good time. She pressed her lips together. I have nothing to say to you. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. Seriously? He looked at the child. Nothing to say to me? Amelia swallowed and looked around nervously. Don't do this here. Daniel leaned toward her, his voice low and tense. Is that child mine? Amelia felt the world crashing down on her. What do you think Amelia will say or do next? Will she reveal the truth or continue to hide? Share your thoughts in the comments. The unspoken truth and a mother's confession. Amelia felt her throat constrict. The restaurant seemed to have fallen silent. The weight of Daniel's question was unbearable. And although her instinct screamed at her to run, she knew that this time, she wouldn't be able to escape. Amelia. His voice was low, contained, but dangerous. Answer me. She swallowed and looked at Leo, who was playing with a plastic spoon on the table. Not here, she whispered. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. Then where? Because it seems that if I didn't run into you by chance, you were never going to tell me. Amelia felt the burning in her eyes, but forced herself to remain firm. My place. Daniel watched her, hesitating. It's not a trap, she said wearily. He nodded distrustfully. Let's go. Amelia's apartment was small, 2 sparsely furnished rooms. Daniel looked around without saying anything, but his expression said it all. You lived like this with my son. Leo fell asleep on the sofa as soon as they arrived. Daniel stared at him intently. Is he mine? He asked again directly. Amelia felt her stomach knot. Yes. The word hung in the air. Daniel let out a sigh, as if he had been punched in the chest. He ran his hands over his face and then walked to the window, turning his back to her. How long have you known? Since the beginning. And you never thought of telling me? I couldn't. Daniel turned sharply. You couldn't? Why? Amelia closed her eyes for a second before speaking. Your mother forced me to leave. Daniel's face hardened. What? When I found out I was pregnant, I tried to tell you, but Eleanor got to me first. She told me you were no longer interested in me, that you were with another woman. Daniel's eyes widened in fury. That's a lie. I know, but at that moment I didn't know. And she offered me money to disappear so I wouldn't cause you problems. Did you accept? No. Amelia lifted her chin. I left because she made me doubt. Because I felt displaced before I could even talk to you. Daniel felt his blood boil. I can't believe my mother would do that. Amelia looked down. I didn't expect you to. The silence between them was thick. I need a moment, he said, walking toward the door. Daniel, she called. He stopped but didn't turn around. I'm not leaving, he said firmly. Leo is my son. I'm not disappearing. And he left, leaving Amelia with a lump in her throat, the unseen years, and a fierce resolve. Daniel walked aimlessly through the streets of the small town, his mind spinning out of control. His mother, Eleanor Brooks, had always been a manipulative woman, but he never thought she would go this far. Manipulating Amelia, making her believe he had forgotten her, and worst of all, hiding his own son from him. He leaned against a wall and closed his eyes, breathing deeply. Leo. Now everything made sense. From the moment he saw the child, he knew there was something more, something that couldn't just be a coincidence. Now he had the certainty. He was his son. 3 years. 3 damned years that had been stolen from his life. He felt a fierce rage, a need to confront his mother instantly. But he knew he first had to resolve something more important. Amelia. She had kept him away, yes, but now he understood why. And although his anger was still there, he also knew he couldn't afford to keep losing time with his son. He took out his phone and dialed. Mark. Now what did you do? I have a son. There was a long silence. Tell me it's not a joke. It's not. His name is Leo. Amelia hid him from me, but not of her own accord. It was my mother. Mark let out an expletive. Damn it, Dan. What are you going to do? Daniel looked at the dark sky over the town. I'm going to meet my son. When he returned to Amelia's apartment, she was still sitting on the sofa, her hands clasped. I thought you wouldn't come back, she said without looking at him. I'm not that kind of person. She let out a dry laugh. I didn't know what kind of person you were when I left. He clenched his jaw. That doesn't matter anymore. What matters is Leo. Amelia nodded slowly. He's asleep. Daniel looked at the room where his son rested. His son. He still couldn't believe it. I want to see him. She hesitated for a moment, but finally stood up and opened the door carefully. The room was small, barely lit by a nightlight. Leo slept with a relaxed face, hugging a worn teddy bear. Daniel approached slowly. He knelt beside the bed and watched him closely. Every feature, every tiny gesture was his. He felt a lump in his throat. 3 years. 3 years of not seeing him grow, of not hearing his first word, of not knowing anything about him. And that wasn't going to continue. He turned to Amelia, his voice barely a whisper. I'm not going to lose any more time with him. She looked at him with something that seemed like sadness in her eyes. I know. Daniel stayed there watching his son sleep. Nothing in the world would take him away from him again. I want to be in his life. The slow dance of trust. Amelia closed Leo's bedroom door carefully and stood with her back to Daniel. His voice still resonated in her head. He hadn't said it as a plea or as a negotiation. He said it with the certainty of a man who had made an irrevocable decision. She took a deep breath before turning around. I don't know how to do this. Daniel looked at her sternly. Me neither, but we're going to find a way. The silence between them was long, uncomfortable. You can't just show up and make decisions, Amelia finally said. It's not a decision. It's a right. He's my son. Amelia clenched her fists. And what do you want to do? Move in here? Burst into his life and change everything? I don't want to hurt him, he replied, controlling his anger. But I can't act as if nothing happened. She ran a hand over her face. I'm not ready for this, Daniel. Well, you'd better get ready, he blurted out. Because I'm not disappearing. Amelia fell silent, looking at him with a mixture of fear and resignation. She knew he meant it. Daniel stayed in the small town. He rented an apartment in the center, small but comfortable. He didn't want to pressure Amelia or Leo, but he also didn't intend to stay away. The first few days were difficult. Amelia set strict boundaries. She let him see Leo, but always with her present. No impromptu visits, no sudden changes. Daniel accepted the rules, at least for now. He knew he had to earn her trust. More importantly, he had to earn his son's trust. Who are you? Leo asked, looking at him curiously. It was the first time they were alone, even if only for a few minutes while Amelia prepared coffee in the kitchen. Daniel smiled nervously. I'm Daniel. Are you my mom's friend? Daniel swallowed. Something like that. Leo frowned, thoughtful. You talk like me. Daniel let out a laugh. How so? Fast and serious? The boy said, shrugging. Daniel felt a strange warmth in his chest. Maybe because we're alike. Leo stared at him as if trying to find something in his face. Are you going to come often if your mom lets me? Yes. The boy studied him a little longer and then nodded naturally. Okay. Daniel smiled. He knew he still had a long way to go, but at least he had taken the first step. You can't expect everything to be easy. Amelia had her arms crossed as she looked at Daniel from the doorway. Leo had just fallen asleep after spending the afternoon with his father, and the atmosphere between them was tense. Daniel took a deep breath. I don't expect it to be easy, but I'm not going to stand by and watch from the sidelines, either. She shook her head, exhausted. You don't understand how complicated this is. Leo has only had me. His world is small, safe, and now suddenly you appear because you were always supposed to be here. He interrupted her firmly. And don't tell me it wasn't my decision because I already know that. But now it is. Amelia lowered her gaze, biting her lip. Do you really think this is solved just by wanting to be here? Daniel crossed his arms. How do you want me to do it, then? That I leave and wait for an invitation years from now? No, Amelia, I'm not going to make that mistake. She pressed her lips together, struggling with her thoughts. I don't want Leo to suffer, she murmured. Neither do I. There was a long silence between them. Finally, Amelia sighed. All right, we'll try, but at my pace. The only thing I want is for you to let me be his father. Amelia's eyes darkened for an instant. That's something that will take time. Daniel nodded. I'm in no hurry. She didn't believe him. She knew Daniel Brooks had never been a patient man. The following days were strange. Daniel spent more time with Leo, naturally gaining his trust. Despite the years of distance, the boy seemed to accept him easily. But not everything was so simple. Every time Daniel held him, every time Leo sought him out with excitement, Amelia felt a mixture of relief and fear. Relief because her son deserved a father. Fear because she didn't know how much longer she could keep the chaos this brought into her life under control. A mother's threat and a father's stand. And then one afternoon, chaos found her first. Amelia was at the market when she felt a chill. She knew that feeling. That pressure in her chest, that certainty that something was wrong. She turned slowly, and there she was, Eleanor Brooks. The woman was impeccable as always, her hair perfectly styled and her posture elegant. Even though the market was not the kind of place where one would expect to find her, Amelia felt her blood run cold. I can't believe you're here, Eleanor said with a calm voice, but sharp as a knife. Amelia clenched her fists. I'm not doing this, she said and turned to leave, but Eleanor stopped her with a subtle movement, barely a brush on her arm. Not so fast, she whispered. You haven't forgotten what we talked about 3 years ago, have you? Amelia felt nauseous. You lied to me. You told me Daniel had another life, that he didn't care. Eleanor smiled humorlessly. And wasn't it easier that way for everyone? For you, not for us. Eleanor's eyes hardened. Don't make this more difficult, Amelia. Difficult for whom? For you? For Leo, Eleanor said softly. Don't think Daniel can handle this. His life isn't made for a child. Do you really want your son to go through everything it means to be a Brooks? Amelia felt a lump in her throat. I don't care what you think. You should, because if you continue with this, he'll take him from you. Fear hit her like a punch. He wouldn't. Are you not sure? Because I am. Amelia felt her heart race. Eleanor looked at her calmly, as if she already knew she had one. I'm going to give you one chance, Amelia, to do the right thing. Amelia felt the trembling in her hands, but didn't let it show. I'm not leaving. Eleanor sighed. Then get ready to lose. And without another word, she walked away. Amelia stood there, feeling the ground sink beneath her feet, because she knew Eleanor Brooks did not make empty threats. Amelia closed her apartment door, her heart pounding. Her hands had been cold for hours since her encounter with Eleanor. She couldn't get Eleanor's words out of her head. Her calculating tone, the certainty with which she had said, "He'll take him from you." She leaned her back against the door and took a deep breath. She couldn't panic. She couldn't afford to tremble. Her instinct screamed at her to run, that she had to disappear before Eleanor carried out her threat. But she couldn't. Leo already knew Daniel. He already saw him as someone important in his life. Leaving again was not an option. But neither could she stand idly by. Daniel arrived the next day knowing nothing. "What's wrong?" he asked as soon as he saw her. Amelia couldn't completely hide it. She looked more tense, more tired. "Nothing," she replied, looking away. Daniel frowned. "Don't lie to me. Something happened." Amelia hesitated for a moment. She wasn't sure if she should tell him. But then she remembered that Daniel wasn't the same man as 3 years ago. "Your mother came to see me." Daniel fell silent. His gaze changed immediately. "What did she say?" "That I should leave, that I should do the right thing." Daniel let out a low laugh, but not of amusement. "Of course she did." Amelia crossed her arms. "She was serious, Daniel." "I know, but I also know I'm not going to let her win." Amelia felt a chill. "It's not a game." Daniel looked at her intently. "Do you think I don't know that?" The atmosphere between them was heavy, but neither looked away. "Leave it to me," he finally said. "I'll fix this." Amelia let out an incredulous laugh. "You can't fix your mother. But I can make sure she doesn't come near you again." Amelia looked at him, doubting. Daniel smiled, but it was a cold smile. "Leave it to me." The showdown and a calculated retreat. Daniel didn't waste time. He called her that same afternoon. "Mother," Daniel said. "Daniel," Eleanor replied calmly. "What a surprise." "We'll skip the pleasantries. I know you spoke with Amelia." Eleanor said nothing for a moment. Then her tone changed. "I did it because I'm worried." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Don't give me that. You did it because you hate not being in control." "I'm thinking about your future." "No," he interrupted her. "You're thinking about yours." There was a long silence. "That child doesn't fit into your life, Daniel." Daniel felt something break inside him. "Are you really saying that?" "I'm not saying you don't want him. I'm saying he's not part of what you've built." Daniel closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Listen carefully, Mom. I'm going to make this clear so there are no misunderstandings. Leo is my son, and you will not interfere in his life or mine again." Eleanor sighed. "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not. I'm setting boundaries." "That's what you think. But in the end, Daniel, you always come back to me." "Not this time." Eleanor remained silent. And for the first time in his life, Daniel felt that she didn't have the upper hand. "Do what you want," she said coldly. "But don't be surprised when things get complicated." "Things are already complicated, and even so, I prefer this rather than continuing to be the obedient son you want." He hung up before she could reply. For the first time, he felt he had landed the first blow. But he knew Eleanor Brooks would not stand idly by. Daniel closed his eyes and exhaled sharply. He had defied Eleanor Brooks, something very few had done without consequences. But this time he wasn't going to back down. He ran a hand over his face and then looked at his phone. He had to focus on what was important. Amelia. The last thing he wanted was for his son to suffer because of his mother's manipulations. He had to strengthen his relationship with him. He had to show Amelia that he was here to stay. And he knew exactly how to start. "Do you want us 3 to go together?" Amelia frowned, surprised by Daniel's proposal. "Just to the park," he clarified. "I'm not saying we should move in together." Amelia crossed her arms. "Why do you suddenly want to do this?" "Because I want to get to know Leo. In his own environment without him feeling like I'm forcing him into anything." She sighed, a little hesitant. Daniel didn't hold it against her. But after a drawn-out silence, she gave a nod. "All right." The park buzzed with kids darting around and having a blast on the swings. Leo slipped his mother's hand and went ahead, all curious. Daniel's eyes followed him, unsure what to do. "You've never really been around kids, have you?" Amelia asked gently. Daniel chuckled, a dry sound. "Nope, it shows, huh?" She watched him for a second, then sighed. "Just keep an eye on him. Let him take the lead." Daniel didn't say anything, but he went over to where Leo was messing around in the sand. "Whatcha building there, buddy?" Leo answered without looking up. "A castle. Wanna help?" The boy finally looked up, thinking hard, and then nodded. Daniel knelt down and grabbed some sand, clueless about what to do with it. "Nah, not like that." Leo said, sounding impatient. First, you gotta make a base. Daniel grinned, without even realizing it. And how's a fella do that? Leo sighed, like he was explaining something to a total newbie. I'll show ya. And for the next half hour, Daniel hung on every word the kid said. Amelia watched them from a distance. She saw how Leo talked without any fear, how Daniel listened, patient as could be, how he chuckled at the little things. She'd never pictured them like this. And against all odds, her son seemed to trust him right off the bat. That was the part that freaked her out the most. Because if Leo started to really care about him, if he started seeing him as a permanent part of his life, she couldn't bear to lose Daniel again. Because if he took off again, this time he wouldn't just be breaking her heart. He'd be crushing her son's too. The slow, creeping feeling of trust. Amelia couldn't tear her eyes away. Daniel and Leo were still in the sand, now trying to build a tower taller than the last one. Leo would crack up every time the whole thing came tumbling down, while Daniel pretended to be super frustrated. It was just a simple scene, but the way it made Amelia feel was anything but. It was fear, plain and simple. Not because Daniel was screwing up, but because he seemed to be doing too good. Too damn good. Every single day, Leo got more and more used to him being around. He looked for him with more confidence. He didn't seem shy anymore when Daniel showed up. And even though Amelia knew that's how it should be, she couldn't shake the worry that was eating at her. What would happen if Daniel just got tired of it all? If he decided it was just too much? If in the end he turned out to be just a visitor in Leo's life? You're all tense again, aren't you? Daniel's voice snapped her out of her head. He was standing right in front of her, with Leo zooming around the yard. Amelia looked away. I'm fine. No, you're not, he said just flat out. What's bugging you? She took a beat before answering. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Scared of what? Amelia swallowed hard before meeting his gaze. That this isn't gonna last. Daniel's face went hard. I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. I say that because it's the truth, Amelia. Amelia shook her head. Daniel, you have a whole other life. Businesses, trips, commitments. I don't know how long you can keep this up. Daniel crossed his arms. And what if I told you that I am staying? That I'm not just here for a short time? Amelia looked at him, a mix of disbelief and a desperate hope that he meant it. I don't know if I can risk trusting that. Daniel took a step closer, his voice quieter, but with a steel edge. It's not just about you, Amelia. It's about Leo. She felt a lump form in her throat. I know, she whispered, but that's exactly what scares me the most. The next few days, Amelia tried to act normal. She didn't want to let her fear screw everything up, but Daniel was sharp. He watched her, noticed when she spaced out, when she seemed to hesitate every time Leo gave him a big, excited hug. And one day, after tucking Leo in, she just couldn't take it anymore. Tell me the truth, Amelia. She looked up from the teacup she was holding in the kitchen. About what? Daniel looked at her, serious as could be. About what's really eating at you. Amelia set the cup down on the table with a soft thud. I don't want Leo to get attached to you if you're not sure you're going to stick around. Daniel put his hands on the table, looking right at her. Amelia, this isn't some game to me. You say that now. Daniel clicked his tongue, sounding impatient. I'm not a kid. I'm not doing this on a whim. I'm here because I want to be here. Amelia held his gaze, feeling her heart pounding way too fast. And what if one day you decide you just can't do it anymore? He stood up straighter. Then tell me what I have to do to prove to you that I'm not going anywhere. Amelia felt her throat tighten up, because she didn't have an answer, because part of her didn't want one, and because she knew that if he kept pushing, she was going to fall hard. Daniel didn't bring up the subject again, but Amelia knew his answer was still hanging in the air between them. He was determined to stay. She was scared he'd leave, and caught in the middle of it all was Leo, getting more and more comfortable with him being around. The days drifted by, and Daniel started picking him up from school when Amelia was stuck at work. Some afternoons he'd take him out for ice cream. Other times they'd just chill in the park and play. It was all so natural, so simple, so damn dangerous. Because for the first time, Amelia started to let herself imagine a future where Daniel was actually there, not just a temporary guest. And that scared the living hell out of her. One night, after Leo was already asleep, Daniel stayed at the apartment later than usual. "Want some coffee?" Amelia asked, not even realizing how strange it sounded. He looked at her with a little smile. "Is that your way of telling me you don't want me to leave yet?" Amelia went quiet. She hadn't even thought about it like that. But when she realized she didn't want him to go, her stomach did a flip. Daniel came over to the table and sat down across from her. "Tell me what's wrong." Amelia looked down. "Nothing." "Amelia." She pressed her lips together and looked him in the eye. "I don't know what to do with you." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know I was such a problem." Amelia sighed. "You are because you're here. Because Leo is getting used to you. Because I—" She stopped, feeling her heart slam against her ribs. Daniel didn't look away. "You what?" Amelia swallowed and looked away. "It doesn't matter." Daniel leaned over the table. "It does matter." Amelia felt like the room was shrinking, that Daniel was way too close, that her feelings were completely out of control. "I'm scared that this is starting to feel normal," she finally blurted out. Daniel tilted his head. "Why?" She let out a dry laugh. "Because if this becomes normal, it means we could lose it." Daniel looked at her in silence for what felt like forever. Then, in a calm but firm voice, he said, "We're not going to lose anything." Amelia couldn't answer, because deep down a part of her wanted to believe him, and that was what scared her the most. A year of normalcy and a promise kept. Daniel couldn't shake Amelia's words from his head. "I'm scared that this is starting to feel normal." There was something in her voice when she said it. Not just fear, but something deeper, too. Something he couldn't quite put his finger on. He didn't want to push her that night. He knew that pressuring her would just make her clam up even more. But he knew for sure that Amelia was feeling something. Something she was fighting tooth and nail. And Daniel, for the first time in a long time, wasn't about to let it go. The days kept coming and going. Leo would wait for him, bouncing with excitement, every time he picked him up from school. Every time he saw that kid smile, Daniel felt something inside him get stronger, more solid. That kid was his own flesh and blood, and he couldn't believe he almost let himself be kept from him. But the hardest part wasn't Leo. It was Amelia. She still kept her distance, even though it was clear she was struggling to do it. Every time their hands brushed while they were walking next to Leo, every time they were alone in the kitchen and the silence got thick enough to cut with a knife, Daniel noticed the way her breathing changed. But she wouldn't do anything, and he was getting tired of waiting. One afternoon, after he'd gotten Leo tucked in, Amelia went out onto the balcony for some air. Daniel followed her. "How long are you going to keep running from this?" She tensed up instantly. "What are you talking about?" Daniel rested his hands on the railing, looking out at the city lights. "Us." Amelia turned around, quick as a whip. "There is no us, Daniel." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You really believe that?" "It's the truth." "It's not." Amelia pressed her lips together tight. "Daniel, we can't." "Why not?" He shot back. "Because you're scared." She looked away. "It's not fear." "Oh, yes it is. I don't want Leo to get confused," she said softly. Daniel stared at her hard. "Or you don't want to get confused yourself." The silence that hung between them was unbearable. Amelia felt her pulse hammering in her ears. Daniel was too close. His voice was too steady, too sure of himself, and she was losing the fight she'd been trying to win ever since he came back. Then, without thinking too much, she said the only thing she had left. "This isn't going to work." Daniel didn't move a muscle. "Why?" Amelia closed her eyes for a split second before answering. "Because I don't know how to trust you again." Daniel took a slow breath. He didn't get mad. He didn't argue. He just nodded. "Then tell me how to do it." She looked at him, surprised. "What?" "Tell me how to make you trust me again." Amelia felt her throat closing up, because she didn't have an answer, because part of her didn't want one, and because she knew that if he kept pushing, she was going to give in. Daniel didn't pressure her after that night on the balcony. But Amelia knew he was waiting. He didn't say it, he didn't show it in any obvious way, but she saw it in his eyes every time they were close, in the patience he had with her, in the way he gave her room to make up her own mind. And the worst part was that with each day that passed, she felt her own defenses getting weaker. But then everything changed. Daniel got the phone call when he least expected it. He was in his office going over some reports when his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but he picked up anyway. Mr. Brooks. The voice on the other end sounded formal, but there was an edge of urgency to it. Yes. Who is this? I'm your mother's lawyer. Daniel felt his blood start to boil. What the hell does she want now? There was a short pause before the lawyer went on. I just wanted to let you know that Mrs. Eleanor Brooks has started legal proceedings to try and get custody of your son. Daniel felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. What did you say? Mrs. Brooks is claiming that you and the child's mother are unfit to raise him. She's requested an evaluation to see if Leo would be better off in her care. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest with pure rage. This is insane. I know, sir, the lawyer said, his tone neutral. But the petition is already in motion. Daniel was speechless. He just couldn't believe it. He knew his mother wasn't going to give up without a fight, but he never thought she'd go this far. And the worst part was that now he had to break the news to Amelia. When he got to the apartment, Amelia opened the door, looking worried. What's wrong? She asked right away. Daniel didn't waste any time. We have a problem. Amelia felt a shiver run down her spine. What happened? My mother's filed a lawsuit to try and get Leo. Felt like the world just stopped turning. No, she can't do that, Amelia whispered, struggling to breathe. Yes, she can, and she is. Amelia leaned back against the wall for support. No, this can't be happening. Daniel grabbed her by the shoulders, making her look at him. I'm going to stop her. I'm not going to let her take our son. But Amelia barely heard him. Her worst nightmare was coming true. Eleanor was making good on her threat. And now, if they didn't do something, they could lose everything. Amelia felt her legs start to tremble. The world was falling apart around her. But Daniel held her tight by the shoulders. Look at me, he said, his voice firm. We're going to fix this. How? She whispered, her eyes wide with fear. It's Eleanor. She's powerful. She has money, contacts, lawyers. And I do too, Daniel cut in. I'm not going to let her win. But Amelia just couldn't breathe. Her whole body was on high alert, like her instincts were screaming at her to run before it was too late. We need a plan, Daniel said, trying to stay calm. We can't just react without thinking. Amelia rubbed her temples. We can't let this go to trial. It won't. Amelia looked at him, not believing it. Daniel, your mother doesn't play fair. I know, he said, his voice cold. And that's why I'm going to fight her on her own terms. The next few days were absolute chaos. Daniel got in touch with his most trusted lawyers and started building his defense. Amelia met with specialists to try and prove that Leo was doing great with her. But the anxiety was keeping her up at night. Every day she was expecting to get some kind of notification, some legal blow that would knock them off their feet. And when it finally came, it wasn't what she was expecting. A letter, hand-delivered to her door. Asterisk, you have one last chance to do the right thing. Don't make this harder for everyone. See you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eleanor. Asterisk, Amelia felt her blood run cold. You're not going alone, Daniel said the second he finished reading the letter. I'm not going at all, Amelia snapped back, her anger bubbling over. If you don't go, you're just giving her more reasons to come after us. Amelia clenched her fists. I'm not going to let her manipulate me again. Daniel looked at her, serious as could be. That's why I'm going with you. She hesitated. She knew that facing Eleanor was a huge risk, but she also knew they couldn't just keep running. The meeting was set for an upscale restaurant, far away from the city. Eleanor was already there waiting when they arrived. She was dressed as always, perfectly put together, with that look of icy superiority on her face. I see you brought backup, she said. a sharp smile playing on her lips. Daniel sat down across from her. "Cut the crap, Mom." Eleanor sighed, like she was so disappointed. Always so aggressive. Amelia crossed her arms. "Tell us what you want." Eleanor looked at them, her eyes cold. "I want what's best for Leo." Daniel let out a dry, sarcastic laugh. "And you're what's best?" "Of course." Amelia felt like screaming. "You don't care about him. You just want to control everything." Eleanor gave her a bored look. "What I want is to save him from a life of mediocrity. Do you honestly think you can give him what he needs?" Amelia's stomach churned. "My son is not an object for you to decide what to do with." Eleanor calmly took a sip of her coffee. "What he is a Brooks, and that means he deserves more than you can give him." Daniel looked at her, his fury barely held in check. "You're not going to touch him." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "And what are you going to do to stop me?" Silence fell over the table. Amelia felt the fear prickling on her skin. Eleanor never made empty threats. And the worst part was he knew it. The war had just begun. Daniel clenched his fists under the table. "You're not going to win, Mom." Eleanor looked at him with an almost amused smile. "And who's going to stop me? You?" "Yes." His voice was so cold and hard that, for the first time, Eleanor's expression changed. Just a little. Amelia saw the woman's eyes narrow ever so slightly. She knew she was calculating. She was sizing up her own son, like he was just a pawn in her twisted game. "You have no idea what you're doing," Eleanor finally said. Daniel rested his elbows on the table and spoke, calm as could be. "Neither do you." The woman raised an eyebrow, acting amused by his show of bravery. "Enlighten me." Daniel took a deep breath and looked her right in the eyes. "If you take this to court, I'll go public." Eleanor smiled, but there was a darkness in her eyes now. "And you think that scares me?" "It doesn't scare you, but it makes you uncomfortable. And you hate being uncomfortable, don't you?" Amelia tensed up. Daniel was right on the money. Eleanor Brooks had built her whole reputation on being a flawless woman, a generous philanthropist, an unbreakable businesswoman. A scandal of this size would bring the media down on her like a pack of wolves. Daniel kept going, not giving her a chance to say anything. "I have proof of everything, of how you messed with my personal life, of how you manipulated Amelia into leaving. And if you decide to move forward with this, I swear every damn newspaper and every news outlet in this country will find out." Eleanor's eyes narrowed to slits. "That will affect you too. I'd rather that than you laying a hand on my son." The silence in the room was thick enough to choke on. Amelia felt her heart pounding in her chest. Eleanor slowly turned her head towards her. "You approve of this?" Amelia didn't look away. "I don't need to approve of it. Leo is mine and Daniel's, not yours." Eleanor gave a mocking smile. "You have no idea the mistake you're making." Daniel crossed his arms. "We'll see." There was a long, drawn-out silence. Then Eleanor stood up with a smooth, elegant motion and grabbed her purse. "I'll think about it." Daniel and Amelia watched her walk away without saying a word. But they both knew that this war was far from over. The next few days were pure hell. Every hour, Amelia was expecting to be served with the lawsuit. Every time the phone rang, her heart jumped into her throat. But the days passed, and nothing happened. Eleanor didn't make a single move, until out of nowhere, Daniel got a text message. "Enjoy your victory, but remember Daniel, there's always more than one way to win." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine when he showed her the screen. "What do you think it means?" she asked in a shaky whisper. Daniel clenched his jaw. "It means that for now, she's going to leave us alone." Amelia sighed, but her body stayed tense. "I don't like this." Daniel looked at her, his eyes serious. "Me neither, but for the first time I think I actually beat my mother." And even though fear was still lurking around them, they knew they had crossed a line that Eleanor could never uncross. No matter what she tried next, Leo was still with them, and that was all that mattered. This is such a gripping turn of events. Do you think Eleanor is truly defeated? Or is she plotting something new? What do you think Daniel and Amelia's next steps should be? Share your predictions in the comments below. A year of normalcy. The air felt lighter in the days that followed. After weeks of intense pressure, Eleanor had backed off. There were no more letters, no more threats, no more attempts at manipulation. But Amelia still couldn't completely relax. "She can't give up that easily," she said one night while they were making coffee in the kitchen. Daniel, sitting at the table, watched her calmly. "It's not surrender. It's strategy." Amelia turned her head, frowning. "What do you mean?" Daniel shrugged. "That she's not going to do anything right now because it's not in her best interest. But that doesn't mean she's accepted defeat." She felt a chill. "That doesn't make me feel any better." "She's not going to make you feel better. But the difference is now we know what we're up against." Amelia sighed and leaned her hands on the counter. "And what if one day she tries again?" Daniel stood up and walked over to her. "Then we'll be ready." She closed her eyes for a moment. She felt like she had been waiting for an attack for so long that now that the battle seemed to be over, her body just didn't know how to relax. Daniel noticed, and for the first time in a long time, he reached out and took her hand, and she didn't pull away. "Amelia." She looked at him and saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before, something that made her feel safe. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you or to Leo." Amelia felt a lump form in her throat. "I don't want this to just be a war against your mother, Daniel." "It's not." There was a long silence. Daniel gently squeezed her hand. "You said you didn't know how to trust me again." Amelia swallowed. "Yes. And now?" She looked down for a second. "Now, I'm not sure." Daniel smiled, not in a mocking way, but with genuine patience. "That's progress." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Maybe." Daniel watched her in silence before letting go of her hand. "I'll wait." Amelia looked at him, surprised. "Wait for what?" "Until you're sure." And before she could answer, he turned and walked away, leaving Amelia with a strange feeling in her chest. Because for the first time she also wanted to wait. Because for the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, they could actually have a future together. A park, a promise, a real family. A year later, Amelia stood at the park entrance and watched the scene unfolding in front of her. Leo was running across the grass, laughing as Daniel chased after him. "I'm gonna get you," Daniel shouted, using that playful voice he only used with his son. Leo shrieked with excitement and ran even faster, but his father easily caught him and swung him up into the air. "No!" "Yes!" They both laughed like they were the only two people in the world. Amelia felt a pang in her chest, of happiness, of relief, of something she didn't quite dare to name, because after everything they had been through, after so many doubts and fears, they were here. Daniel noticed her watching and gave her a smile. One that didn't demand answers. One that simply said, "I'm here." Amelia walked over and sat down on their usual bench. Leo ran to her and wrapped his arms around her legs. "Mommy, Daddy runs super fast." Amelia ruffled his hair. "That's because he has long legs." Daniel dropped down beside her, breathing hard. "I'm too old for this." Amelia laughed. "You're such a drama queen." He grinned at her sideways. "You haven't seen me when my back goes out yet." She shook her head and looked at Leo, who was already digging in the dirt. "He's happy." Daniel looked at her gently. "We are too." Amelia felt the warmth spreading through her chest. A year ago, she never would have imagined this moment. Not with Daniel. Not with the family they had rebuilt. But here they were, not with a perfect ending, not with a guaranteed forever, but with something much more real. With the promise to keep trying. This beautiful story of healing, trust, and the true meaning of family has reached its emotional conclusion. If you were moved by Daniel and Amelia's journey, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs a reminder that love can truly conquer all. And for more inspiring tales of resilience and connection, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell.